Welcome to part 3. In part 2, we set up a getProducts function and a renderProducts function, which worked to get a big array of the products from our database. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to functions.php and modify a couple other functions here. These particular functions, the getItemCost and productsExist functions, we could modify them. Actually, they should already work, to be honest, because we changed this getProducts, and you'll notice the getProducts returns the big array that we created earlier. However, it seems a bit inefficient for us to be asking the database to get every single one of our products if we need just a single item. In this case, we just want the price of one single item in this big database. So what I want to do instead is I want to change this to use a MySql query to just find that one unique item that we need. If you're going to have a large database with lots of products in it, it's incredibly inefficient to ask the database to give you all of the records in it just for one little thing. So I'm going to start by simply deleting everything in this function. And we're going to start by basically repeating what we have up here a little bit. So I'm going to start with that. Again, we need to use global MySql, and in this case though we want to use a MySql statement because we're going to be passing in this products ID. And what you'll notice, I'm not sure if I can do this just yet, don't worry about these issues, but if you look at the URL here, you'll notice that we have an ID in the URL that's passed to it every time we try to add an item to the cart. And the way we've set this up is this product ID is generated by getting that function, getting that ID variable from the URL. So we want to make sure that this is valid and there are no issues with it. Just in case someone tries to pass in invalid or potentially malicious data. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use a statement. So I'm going to start off with if, and I'm going to do statement, so stmt, and that's going to be a new MySql statement, so MySql. We're going to do a prepare, and we want to select just the price from products, where the ID equals the thing that we're going to pass in. And if it does, we continue. Otherwise, let's display an error message. And so if we code this correctly, we should never see this error message, but it's always good to have it there just in case. So now if the preparation of this goes fine, which it should, we want to go ahead and bind the variables in place. And we do that using the bind params. And this function takes two parameters. The first one is the type that we're passing in. In this case, it's going to be a string, so it's s. And the second variable, or second parameter that we pass in, is the variable. So basically, this line replaces a query that would look similar to this, where the question mark was product ID. And MySql is smart enough that it'll protect us from any malicious data that might be passed in. So we're going to bind the parameters. We're going to, let me change that up there. Next will be to execute. And next we'll store the results. Just result, there we go. And if we have results to view, we're going to check that. So if statement num rows, if it's larger than 0, we know we have results from this query. Now else, we never should have this issue. I'm going to go ahead and throw a new exception in this case. And I'm just going to say product not found. So we should have results from this query. And all we have to do now is statement find result. And we're going to give it a variable that we're going to call price. And that's what we want to get from this query. And statement fetch, like so. And finally, we return this price. And one thing you'll notice is if you check the database, you'll notice that we have this price column set up as a double. But for example, if you put in 20.00, it shortens that to simply 20. So we want to go ahead and fix that just in case. So rather than returning just price, we're going to format it slightly. And we're going to use a number format function. And we're going to pass in price, and we're going to say 2 to 2 decimal places. So let me go ahead and save this. And that's all there is to it for this particular function. To go back over it one more time, we have exchanged out using XML, and we want to use this particular query because we want to only return the one item of data that we need. We don't need to return the entire list of products in our database. So it simply finds the object we need where the ID equals the product ID that we pass in on this function. It executes it, it stores the results, it checks if the num results are over 0. Excuse me, can't talk today. If the num rows are larger than 0, it gets the results of that and returns the price that we were looking for. Now down below, the last function that we need to change is products exists, and we want to do a very similar thing. As I said earlier, we could use get products, but it's pretty inefficient, so we're going to use a MySql I statement instead. So let's go ahead and get started with this. I think I'm going to start by simply copying and pasting this entire section, replacing it, because a lot of the code is similar. Okay, so here we go. So this is fine. The prepare, we just want to select the ID. And that's fine. We want to execute, store the results. If it's over 0, we don't want to return any data. So if it's over 0, we just return true. And if for some reason we have an issue, we return false. And I believe that's all that there is to it for this particular function. So let me save this. And I believe there's only one other little bit that we're going to have to change within the shopping cart.php file. But let's go ahead and take a look at what we have in Firefox so far. And I can fix any bugs that I might have accidentally added. Okay, so functions line 64. There we go. It's a function, so we need to add the parentheses on it. And I'm pretty sure we have the same issue. We didn't need to use fetch down here, so we're fine. Okay, so there we go. Looking a lot better. Let me go ahead and clear the cart. And let's go ahead and add this to the cart. So one of the things you'll notice is that we have an issue. We're not displaying the correct number of zeros. So one change I want to make to the shopping cart file, if you go down to the get item cost, and instead of returning just this, I'm going to use that function that I talked about earlier, and I'm going to do number format, comma 2. So that should take care of that. And let me go back to functions. That should be fine. Go back to view store. There we go. So if you go back to the cart now, we have that fixed. Rather than simply showing 20, it shows 20 with 2 zeros at the end. It looks like we have one display issue here as well. So let me go back and check that. Ah, yes. We also need to use that function when we're getting our information from the database. Okay, so that's saved, and I believe that's it. Refresh this. Yep, there we go. And we can easily add items to the cart. Notice everything's showing up correctly. And this is all pulling information from a database rather than the XML file. So just to check, I can easily show you this. I'm going to delete the story.xml file. So, and I can even delete this definition here. Save it, and this should still work fine. There we go. So yep, everything's working just fine without the XML file. Just a couple minor things at the end here. I do want to mention that obviously we're missing some semi-major functionality. I mean, it's great that you can use MySql now to make a connection to the database, and that you're pulling this product database, or pulling the products from a database. However, obviously you would want to set up some sort of functionality in place to be able to add products and remove products from your database using PHP. I'm not going to go over it at this point. I might do it in the future, perhaps if enough people would find it useful. But to give you a start on that, if you are interested, check out the PHP cred videos that I put out, which talk about creating, reading, updating, and deleting records from a database. And also take a look, I have another tutorial on creating a password protected members area, which also could be useful, because obviously you don't want someone accidentally stumbling onto the admin section of your site and adding and removing products without your permission. So hopefully that'll get you started. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you found it useful, and feel free to contact me if you have any questions or comments. My email is ben@killersites.com, and you can find me on the Killer Sites forums at killersites.com/community, where I go by the username Vulcan Creative. Thanks for listening.